I've been watching kids for extra money since I was about 16. So by the time I was in my early 20s, I thought I'd seen everything. Tantrums, allergies, one kid who used to eat paper. Nothing really caught me off guard anymore. But there was one family I sat for when I was 22 that I still think about more than I probably should. The mom's name was Diane. She found me through a mutual friend and reached out, asking if I'd be available on weekends. She had a son named Callum, 8 years old, and she was a single parent who worked occasional evening shifts at a hospital. She seemed completely normal, warm even. The kind of person who over-explains things because she genuinely wants you to be comfortable. I liked her right away. The first time I showed up, Callum was sitting at the kitchen table doing a puzzle. He looked up at me, said hi, and went straight back to it. Quiet kid, polite. He didn't talk much that night, which didn't bother me. Some kids just take time to warm up. The only thing that stuck with me was that at one point I caught him staring at me from across the room. Not in a curious way, more like he was studying me. When I smiled at him, he didn't smile back. He just looked away. I told myself he was probably just shy. That was the first time. I didn't think much of it. The second weekend I came back, things were mostly the same. We watched a movie, I made him a grilled cheese, and he went to bed without any fuss. Normal enough, but right before I tucked him in, he said something I brushed off in the moment but came back to me later. He asked me very casually whether I slept with the door open or closed. I told him I slept with it closed and asked him why. He just shrugged and said he was asking for a friend. I laughed it off. He was 8. Kids say weird things. It wasn't until my third visit that something shifted. I was sitting on the couch around 9 o'clock, phone in hand, when I heard Callum moving around upstairs. I figured he'd gotten up for water, but the footsteps weren't heading toward the bathroom. They were slow and deliberate, moving from one side of the hallway to the other, back and forth. I went to the bottom of the stairs and called up to him. He answered immediately, sounded completely fine, said he was going back to bed. The footsteps stopped. I stood there for a second listening, and then went back to the couch, but I kept the TV on mute for the rest of the night, and I'm not sure I could tell you exactly why. When Diane came home, I almost said something. Almost. I didn't want to make her feel like something was wrong with her kid over what was probably nothing, so I just told her the night went fine, took my money and left. The fourth visit was the one that made me seriously consider not going back. It was late in the evening, maybe 9:30, and Callum had been in bed for over an hour. I was in the kitchen getting a glass of water when I heard him talking in his room. I assumed he was on a tablet or something, but Diane had told me screens went off at 8. I stood in the hallway outside his door and listened for a minute. He wasn't watching anything. He was talking, steadily, quietly, like he was in the middle of a conversation. I knocked and pushed the door open. He was sitting upright in bed in the dark, and he stopped the second the door opened. He looked at me completely normally and said he was just thinking out loud. I asked him who he was talking to, and he said very plainly that he was practicing. I asked him what he meant by that. He said, just as plainly, what to say when you're asleep. I didn't know how to respond to that. I told him to get some sleep and close the door. I sat in the kitchen for the rest of the night with every light on. The last time I was in that house was a few weeks later. I remember convincing myself I'd overreacted, that he was just a kid with a strange sense of humor and imagination. Diane had been nothing but kind and reliable. I felt guilty for even considering quitting. That night was quiet for the most of it, normal. Callum went to bed around 8:30 without any trouble. I was on the couch when I heard something just after 11. It was faint, coming from the hallway upstairs. I turned the TV off and listened. It sounded like whispering, but slow, almost rhythmic, like something being recited. I went upstairs. Callum's door was slightly open. I pushed it open the rest of the way. He was standing at the foot of his own bed, back to me, facing the wall. He was whispering something I couldn't make out, and his arms were at his sides, completely still. He wasn't moving at all, just standing there, whispering at the wall. I said his name. He stopped. And then, after a long pause, he turned around. His face was completely blank. Not scared, not startled. He looked at me like he'd been expecting me to come in, looked me up and down once, and then got back into bed and pulled the covers up without a single word. I texted Diane that same night and told her I couldn't come back. I said I had scheduling conflicts. She replied saying she understood and she hoped everything was okay. And that was the last I ever heard from her. I've thought about it a lot since then, what he was whispering, what he meant about practicing what to say while I was sleeping, whether that was the first time he'd done that or just the first time I'd seen it. I don't have any answers to any of it. I'm not sure I want them. My grandmother never slept in the back bedroom. That was just a fact of the house, like how the third step creaked or how the kitchen window never fully closed. Nobody talked about it. It was just understood. I moved in with her the summer I turned 17, after things at home got complicated. She had a 2-story house in rural Georgia, the kind of town where nothing happens and everyone knows it. My grandmother was sharp, practical, a little cold. She'd raised 4 kids mostly alone and had no patience for what she called dramatics. I respected that about her. I still do. The back bedroom sat at the end of the upstairs hallway. Bed, dresser, a window facing the tree line. She told me on the first day I was welcome to use it for storage. She said it casually, almost too casually, then changed the subject before I could respond. I noticed later that the dresser drawers were completely empty. Empty in a way like someone had decided nothing would ever go in them again. I didn't think much of it at the time. My grandmother didn't believe in air conditioning. My bedroom caught the afternoon sun, and by 9 at night, sat at maybe 90 degrees. I'd lie on top of the sheets soaked through, staring at the ceiling. 3 weeks in, I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my pillow and walked down the hall. The back bedroom was at least 15 degrees cooler. A cross breeze moving through from the tree line. I lay down and was asleep within minutes. I woke once in the night for no clear reason, lying there half awake. I noticed the breathing in the room didn't quite match my own. A rhythm underneath mine, slightly slower, slightly off. I told myself it was an echo off the walls. I went back to sleep. In the morning, there was an indentation on the mattress beside me. Just a slight depression, like weight had rested there. I stared at it, then straightened the sheets and went downstairs. She was already in the kitchen. She watched me pour water, then asked quiet where I'd slept. I told her, said it was cooler, that I hadn't been sleeping well. She turned back to the stove. Her grip on the dish towel tightened slightly, just for a second. "Don't sleep in there again," she said. No explanation, no reason given. Something in her tone stopped me from pushing back. Not anger, something quieter. A few nights later, I caved. Middle of July, genuinely miserable. I waited until I heard her bedroom door click shut, then went back down the hall. I slept fine for a few hours. Then, something woke me. Not a sound, more like a change in the air. I opened my eyes, and she was standing at the foot of the bed. Just standing, hands at her sides, staring at me. The hallway light behind her made it hard to see her face, but I could tell she'd been there a while already, settled into it. I said her name. She didn't answer. I said it again. She turned slowly and walked out. No words, just gone, like she'd finished whatever she'd come to do. I lay back down. The window across the room was open about 3 inches. I was certain I checked it before lying down. I hadn't wanted it to bang in the night. There was no wind. The curtain hung completely still. I watched the ceiling until it got light, then went down and acted like nothing had happened. She was cheerful over breakfast, asked if I'd slept well. I said fine. I left 2 days later, packed my bag, hugged her, drove the 40 minutes home without the radio. I kept replaying her standing there, still, silent, at the foot of the bed, wrong in a way I didn't have language for yet. This is the part I still don't know how to talk about. 4 nights later, I woke up around 3 to a low, rhythmic murmuring. My brain tried to place it, a TV, a phone, my parents down the hall, but the house was empty except for me. They were away for the week. As I came fully awake, I realized it was in the room. She was standing at the foot of my bed. She'd driven 40 minutes in the middle of the night. I hadn't heard her come in. Same nightgown, eyes open but not quite looking at me, looking through me, focused on something just past my face. I forced myself to listen. Lord, cover this child. Something has followed him, Lord. Something got hold of him in that room, and I felt it leave with him, Father. And he don't even know. She broke into something that wasn't quite English, then back. Demon, you release him. He don't belong to you. He went in that room and you latched on. And I'm telling you now, you have to go. Her eyes shifted, just slightly, to the left of my head. Her whole body still. She was watching something with a focus so total I turned to look, certain I'd see it too. But nothing, just the wall. The dark corner where the ceiling met. When I looked back, her eyes had moved, tracking something crossing the room. Her chin dropped, like whatever it was had come closer. Then, clear and direct, looking straight at me, "Repent," she said. Suddenly clear and direct, looking straight at me. "Boy, you need to repent. You opened a door and you need to close it. You hear me? You need to close it now." I turned on the lamp. She blinked. Something shifted in her face, like a curtain being pulled back. She looked around the room slowly, confused. The way someone looks when they've woken up somewhere unfamiliar. She looked at me, then down at herself, then back at me. She didn't say anything else. She walked out without a word. I heard her settle onto the living room couch. I still don't know how she got in. I'm almost sure the doors were locked. In the morning, she was gone before I woke up. She'd folded the blanket she used and left it on the armrest. She never brought it up, not once, not ever, in the years I had left with her. I've thought about that night more times than I can count. The rational part of me says she was sleepwalking or confused. Or maybe her mind was starting to go in ways none of us had noticed yet. That's probably what it was. It has to be. But I've never been able to fully shake what she said. Something got hold of him in that room. She said it like she knew. And the thing is, she told me not to go in there. She told me on the very first day. My twins stopped sleeping in their rooms when they were 6. Not in a dramatic way. They didn't come running into our bed screaming about monsters. It was Maya who started first, quietly showing up in the hallway outside her door most mornings, curled up on the floor with her blanket like she dragged herself there in the night. I'd find her before sunrise and carry her back to bed, and she'd wake up a few hours later perfectly fine. No memory of it. I didn't think much of it at the time. After the 3rd or 4th morning, my husband suggested we just let her sleep with us for a while. Maya climbed into our bed that first night like she'd been waiting for permission. Her brother Eli thought the whole thing was unnecessary. He was never the anxious one. Where Maya was quiet and careful, Eli was the kind of kid who'd walk into a dark basement without a second thought just to prove he could. He told us at breakfast that Maya was being a baby. She didn't argue. just looked at her cereal. The first time I noticed something off was maybe 2 weeks in. I woke up around 3 a.m. and found Maya sitting upright beside me, eyes open, completely still. She was looking toward the open bedroom door, out into the hallway, her gaze fixed upward at a slight angle, toward the corner where the hallway wall meets the ceiling. I called her name softly and she didn't react. I told myself she was just half awake, but there was something about how still she was. Not restless like a drowsy child. That made me watch her until her eyes closed again. It took a while. It kept happening. Every few nights, same posture, same angle, same corner. There's an old water stain up there from a leak we never properly fixed. Just a faint brown ring on the plaster. And her gaze landed on it each time with a precision that started to unsettle me more than I wanted to admit. I mentioned it to my husband and he said she was probably just waking up disoriented. I agreed, but I started sleeping lighter after that. About a week later, Eli started having trouble. He didn't make a big thing of it. That wasn't his way. He came to breakfast one morning looking tired and said he kept waking up for no reason. I assumed disrupted sleep, the change in routine. He slept fine the next 2 nights and I forgot about it. Then on the 3rd night, I heard his door open around 2 a.m. I got up quietly. When I stepped into the hallway, Eli was standing a few feet from his door, arms loose at his sides, head tilted back at the same sharp angle I'd seen on Maya's face. He was staring at the ceiling corner, at the stain. His eyes were wide open and I genuinely couldn't tell if he was awake. I called his name. Nothing. I called it again, louder, and he turned slowly, blinking, and said in a completely normal voice, "I was just getting water." Then he went back to his room and closed the door. He didn't remember it in the morning. That was the part that stayed with me. Not that it happened, but that it happened to both of them. Maya I could half explain away, but Eli wasn't built for nervousness. Eli didn't spook. And yet there he was, standing in the same spot, staring at the same fixed point his sister had been staring at for weeks. They hadn't discussed it. I know because I asked, carefully. Neither of them knew the other had been doing it. Then Maya started drawing it. I only put it together later. She'd been leaving the same picture everywhere for weeks. On the kitchen table, in her backpack, folded in her jeans pocket when I did laundry. Always the same image, a hallway, a small figure on the floor. And in the upper corner, something dark. Not a person, not a recognizable shape, just something dark rendered in overlapping circles. The way kids draw when they're pressing too hard with the crayon. I asked her once what it was. She looked at the drawing for a moment and said, completely matter-of-factly, "That's the thing that watches." Then she went back to her cereal. When I showed Eli one of the drawings a few days later without telling him his sister had made it, he studied it quietly. Then he pointed to the dark shape and said, "That's not right. It's bigger than that." He handed it back and walked outside to ride his bike, and I stood in the kitchen not knowing what to do with what he just told me. We sold the house 8 months ago. New city, new school, fresh start. Both kids have slept normally since the move. Their own rooms, full nights, no incidents. They're fine. By every measure I have, they're completely fine. But last week, I got a message from the woman who bought the house. She was friendly about it, almost apologetic. She said they'd had a contractor in to fix the old water damage in the upstairs hallway, and when he opened up the ceiling to check the rot, he found something inside the wall cavity. A small pile of objects, a button, 2 coins, a child's shoe, and a piece of paper, folded many times over, with something drawn on it in faded pencil. She sent me a photo. I haven't been able to look at it for more than a few seconds. I can't fully make out everything in it, except that in the upper corner of the drawing, there's something dark. And below it on the floor are 2 small figures. I don't know what my kids were looking at all those nights. I don't know what they knew that I didn't, or how they both knew it independently without a word passing between them. I don't know if any of it truly connects, or if I'm just a parent who needed things to connect. What I do know is that neither of them has asked about the old house since we left. 2 kids who spent 6 years there. And between them, not a single word about it. I think about that more than I probably should.